So let's talk about this episode of SmackDown. I think overall, on the whole, I think my general consensus is it was a pretty good show, especially considering, the previous weeks of SmackDown, and considering, the 3-hour format, and especially considering that we're literally a week away from the whole Money in the Bank, June 7th whole thing. I will also say I think this episode of SmackDown I actually enjoyed a lot more because of, the returns and the matches that we had here. We had Money in the Bank qualifying matches, and we had the return of Bianca Belair in her hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee, and we had the return of Cody Rhodes back to SmackDown. They kind of promoted the whole face-to-face thing between him and Cena. So I guess we'll start there. Cody Rhodes came out here to a massive reception, and that was kind of the thought for a lot of us, as far as Cody Rhodes, when he returns, what's going to be the general reaction to him, because that whole Vegas weekend, the whole 2-night Vegas weekend, whatever, the crowds genuinely were heavily anti-Cody, heavily pro Cena, and that's going to be a common theme going forward. No matter where they are, Cena is going to be, I think, favored a lot heavily compared to Cody, but tonight they were all out for him. Obviously, this was his return sort of to SmackDown. He mentioned how, he left WrestleMania and he had a moment to reflect on, what had just occurred to him. He even mentioned The Rock. He mentioned the final boss by, I guess by his nickname, right? The final boss. And I was like, what? Why are we mentioning the final boss? I said, is there does this mean that this is a possibility going forward, that the final boss is coming back, or what? Is that just my own delusional mind, speaking for myself there, or what? But he did mention the final boss. He mentioned that he asked a friend whether or not he was a good champion, and that his response was, a yes, and that made him feel good. That gave him a piece of hope, a silver lining in this whole fiasco. Eventually, he says that, for his return, he wanted to do something big, and what else could he do other than bring the World Heavyweight Champion Jey Uso? So he brings out Jey Uso. Jey Uso comes out there and yeets with everybody. They do the second go around for the yeeting. Eventually, John Cena comes out here and calls, Cody and Jey John Cena wannabes, calls them nepo babies, etc. Brings out his tag team partner. He says, this is the only man that goes by my morals, that goes by hustle, loyalty, respect. Logan Paul comes out there, cuts his typical Logan Paul promo, I will admit, and eventually Jey Uso says, why wait till Money in the Bank? We could do this right here, right now in Knoxville, Tennessee. So eventually they all kind of, have a little mini scuffle within, each other. And eventually Cody and Jey stand tall over Cena and Logan Paul, as Cody and Jey hold both World Heavyweight Championships up in the air. So this is going to be the match going forward for Money in the Bank. I'm really relieved that thankfully Travis Scott isn't going to be involved in this, neither is Jimmy Uso. But I think as far as the Money in the Bank match, I think who do you have win this match? I think you have to have Cody Rhodes go in there and win this match, because he even did say in this promo, he said that, John Cena, when it comes to John Cena, he hesitated at WrestleMania, but now going forward, he will not make that mistake once again. So I think possibly at Money in the Bank, you have Cody beat Logan Paul, or have him beat John Cena, and then we set up the rematch at SummerSlam. At least that's what I'm thinking they're gonna do. There's always the possibility of something else occurring at this show, but I genuinely do believe that Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso are probably going to end up walking out as the winners in that tag team match for Money in the Bank. And as far as Money in the Bank, we also had a women's qualifying match between Naomi, Jade, and Nia Jax. My sort of heavy favorite going into this was Naomi, and Naomi got the win here. It was kind of a little funky there at the end, but Naomi got the win. They did have a opening segment here with Naomi, Bianca Belair, where essentially, Naomi, she's pleading her case. She wants Bianca to forgive her once and for all. She said that she even went to Bianca's parents' house and tried to get in touch back with Bianca. She saw pictures in which Bianca was featured in, and Bianca looked so happy, side by side with Naomi. And eventually Jade Cargill comes out here to attack Naomi. So they're still kind of running the whole Jade, Naomi, Bianca story, which I'm all for. I think Bianca, her inclusion in this is definitely going to add a lot of intrigue to it. And as far as the men's side, we had Jacob Fatu against Andrade against Carmelo Hayes. Going forward in this match, I literally thought that Carmelo was the favorite. I figured, Andrade, he's cool and everything, but I didn't really see them giving it to Andrade. Fatu, you could have him in there, but eventually Fatu, he's running the story with Solo and with JC, so I kind of was hesitant as far as him getting this position. So I looked at Carmelo and I kind of figured, okay, Carmelo's probably the favorite to win this, and plus Carmelo needs something to kind of pick him right back up, because he's literally, fiddling around with the Miz on SmackDown, which is literally just, you don't want to be there if you're Carmelo Hayes. But Solo Sikoa and JC came out here. They try to help, but the way this was set up, it literally looked like Solo was trying to sabotage his partner Jacob Fatu, and Jacob Fatu eventually does get sabotaged by this, and Andrade ends up picking the win over Carmelo Hayes. Jacob Fatu is pissed afterwards. He tells Solo, like, I don't need your help going forward. I don't need you at all. So I thought this was probably going to be the turning point. I don't know when they do the eventual turn, because I feel like there's only so many times Solo can screw over Jacob Fatu until eventually, Jacob Fatu has to snap, and I just don't know when that's going to be. We also got the return of the Wyatt Six. They took out the entire sort of tag team division here on SmackDown, and kind of a repeat segment of what happened last week. But my whole deal is, what's the actual motive behind the Wyatt Six? Like, why are they attacking for the tag team championships? There has to be a reason. It can't just be like, oh, we're a spooky faction and we want to take out everybody. Like, that's not a legitimate excuse to me. Like, what is the actual excuse for them going after the tag team champions? But like I said, overall, I did enjoy this episode of SmackDown. There was other things here sprinkled in as well that I may have forgotten about. But mainly the two most important things were the qualifying matches and the face-to-face between Cody Rhodes and John Cena once again. So let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know your thoughts and your reactions to SmackDown here tonight. And until next time, I will see all of you on the next one.